presence with thanksgiving in your heart and give him praise.
Hello and welcome. I'm Bonnie Libhart, and I'm glad you're joining us for Vision Plus. I want to ask you a question. You've been hearing a lot lately about Leona Helmsley and that she's going to prison. If you remember the story, and I'm sure that you do, Leona is the woman that supposedly, and was convicted in fact, of taking a lot of, having people work on her property and in her business, and taking personal things and writing them off as business. Well, I don't remember all of the things that she's been accused of doing, but she's a very, 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 very wealthy woman, and her husband's in his 80s, and she, of course, has just been taken to prison. And the question I have to you is, prison proper punishment for the Leonas of the world? If you can just imagine what it would be like to have those heavy prison doors to open and to be stripped down, told to bend over, go to her, as the expression goes, her eggshell white skin, and where she's stripped and searched, and then another door is open, and she looks on this sea of faces. They're listless faces. It must be a little bit like what we would have to look at when we go into, well, I hope none of us that are listening have that, but the people who go into hell that see the listless eyes of the listless faces that look so hopeless and helpless. That's the way the faces are of many people that are in prison. Some of you, I know that when we were going to church here in Huntsville before we ever went over to Gunnersville, now we've been going back and forth, but I know I've met some other people. In fact, I have actually gone and spoken to people in prison in other states and have been approved now to go to visit people in prison here. And I'm really wondering if prison is the proper punishment for a lot of people. I know that there are people who have been saved in prison, and for us that do go and minister in prison, we hope that happens to them. But is it the right place? In prison, now she's a Caucasian, a white person that is and has been very, very wealthy since she married Mr. Helmsley. And in her case, I'm wondering how much resentment there will be by the other prisoners for having a white, wealthy woman, if that won't actually make it even more difficult for her. And as I was thinking about what she must be going through in these weeks since entering, if in fact she is being treated like a prisoner would be that goes into a jail, a prison for today. And if you've ever had the opportunity or the sadness to have to visit someone in prison, then you know that it is a place where lives are changed. Yes, many of them are changed for better, but many times the hope that they've ever had is taken away, and there is a hopelessness and a helplessness about it. But there's also a lot of anger, a lot of unbelievable cruelty that happens in prison. There are women of one race that will fight women of another race. There's humiliation that goes on. Well, we'd like to say that no one smokes, but of course they do smoke. The prison guards have to light the cigarettes of the prisoners, and I can certainly understand that, and they only have a certain time that they can smoke. I wish that they would all quit smoking, they wouldn't have that problem. But they have a lot of types of humiliation. Every time a visitor comes, then the prisoner is searched, the visitor is searched. The visitor must wait in this waiting room for a long time before they can go in. Well, it's literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that are spent on these prisoners. Now, in Leona's case, she actually offered to pay the money that supposedly she was charged for using it for personal reasons when it was, and counting it off as a business expense. She wanted to pay it back, and I know in the Bible that they're allowed to pay back their restitution, and also to pay it back, they have to pay back fivefold. Or if they've stolen something, in her case that would be considered stealing something, then they are to pay it back. But I was thinking about all the ways that maybe what she and many people like her have done, which is not really a sex crime, it's not really a violent crime in the sense that she didn't go out and murder someone in cold blood, premeditated murder. Wouldn't there be another way that those people could be helped, and that they could help others and not cause the taxpayer so much money? And so my mind started brainstorming the ways, and I was thinking about where it talks in Isaiah 61:1, where it says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound." Now, they're talking about the prison of the mind, the prison of whatever. If you're bound by drugs, alcohol, those are prisons. In a home where there's abuse, that's a prison. There's a lot of different types of prison in addition to the physical prison. It says to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all those that mourn, to appoint unto those who mourn in Zion, to give unto them the beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that He might be glorified. Now, how could we take a situation of a person who goes to a physical prison, is convicted by a jury that yes, they've broken the law, they must go to prison? How could our taxpayers' money, if it's $27,000 a year, you multiply that by 10 people, by 100 people, by 1,000 people, and how could that money be used more wisely? Let's just take her case as an example. What if all the properties that she owned could be used for the homeless, for the battered wives, for the unwed mothers? That property, those homes, could be used, those houses, that property could be used to house these people. If she's convicted, I think that particular person, they expect her to spend 16 months in prison. Well, just that 16 months could give a lot of people who have nowhere to go a time of regrouping, of reframing, of revamping their life, time to think, time to do something differently, and that they could use her property for that. And instead of her being away, what if she went to a place that she had to take care of the unwed mothers, the infirm and aged, that need someone to go for groceries, that need someone to change the beds, that need someone to wash their hair. I was just thinking about my mom, my own personal mother that I mentioned to you, that's broken both arms. Hey, she's 87 years old, and she is just now getting to the point where she can wiggle her fingers with 2 casts on and turn the lights on and off in her home. She still is having to have someone else to give her baths and those things. Well, multiply that by the hundreds of thousands of aged and infirm across this wonderful country of ours. If we could have those people who are being put in prison that may be injured because other people in the prison are angry at the Caucasian wealthy people that are being housed there, and our tax money going for that, if there couldn't be a way that instead of them going to prison, sure, maybe you'd have to have a guard to make sure that they're doing that, but we could pay the guard to watch that person instead of that person going to prison, and see that the person has to go and, in fact, go get groceries, go change the diapers of the incontinent person, the person with Alzheimer's, live in the house with an Alzheimer's patient. Let the people that have Alzheimer's people in their household have a 20-minute break, a 20-hour break, a 48-hour break, where they could go and have a breather. If my dad had Alzheimer's for 8 years. He didn't know people. He had had a stroke, and then it went in, one thing goes to another. My mother kept him in her home for those 8 years, even though people said, why don't you just put him in some place? Well, yes, she could have done it. She could have chosen to do that. She just needed a break every once in a while. Get out, get her hair done. Well, if the people in prison that are non-sex, criminal in the sense, not violent crimes. These are people who are, well, I hate to use the word good people, but they haven't done anything that would say that they're going to be rehabilitated by keeping them in a prison. If you're going to do anything, let them go and be forced to change the beds, the diapers, the personally feed people who cannot feed themselves. And there are so many things that they could do. They could change the light bulbs in the home of I know a couple that's just in the Tennessee Valley in the Victory Network viewing area, that she's 71 years old and her husband's had a stroke and she's trying to keep him at home. She's just having a little consignment shop of people who bring clothing and things over, just trying to keep her home together. And she could stand having someone live in her home. What if the prisoner and the guard lived in her home, and the prisoner had to take care of this family that just needs someone to take care of them? They have a home. They want to keep the home. They don't want to go to a home for the aged. They've got their bright minds. They can still do some things. Just because he had a stroke and he can't really speak plain and he can't maybe feed himself, there are other answers to using our tax money more wisely than just to pack these people into prisons. What they want to do, they want to build more prisons. There are other ways our money could be spent more wisely than to pack another person into prison. They're so overcrowded in some of these prisons, the jails and the prisons, that these people get on each other's nerves. They don't have enough to do. I hear that some of the white-collar crimes, I was just talking to one of the newspaper editors here in town of a newspaper that I write for every week. Well, I'll tell you, it's Valley News. Go pick up a Valley News and here right in this area. And they say that there are prisons that some of the white-collar workers, the people who have embezzled and that, they actually play golf every day, and it's more, they stay in, yes, they're incarcerated in the sense that they are kept away from other people, but they actually supposedly have time to, they're like in a motel room, you might call it. Well, I don't think that's right either. Why should our tax money be paying for some kind of white-collar country club, if I might use that term? But if they're not put in that, if they're in the places where I've visited, and some of you have visited when we go to do Bible studies or in prisons, well, those people are needing our help. Many of them are kept away from their children. There are other answers, and we could sit down together and come up with some other answers for people in prison. I think there are a lot of other answers, and I think there are answers for people who want to do something different. There's so many verses in the Bible about people in prison. In Psalms 142:7, it's talking about bringing my soul out of prison. And Ecclesiastes 4:14, out of prison he comes to reign. Well, Isaiah 53:8, taken from prison and from judgment. And I read 61:1, Luke 5:25, and let's see, that's Luke 12:58. Thou be cast into the prison. It says if you don't pay your debts. And yes, we need to follow what our country has, the rules that we have, paying our taxes and all the rules. I was thinking that it's in Romans 13, I believe Romans chapter 13, where it talks about that we are to pay our taxes. We are to, that there's no one in, I wish I could find that real quickly. I'm going to be looking for it as I talk to you. But it is, I'm pretty sure it's Romans 13. I have these tapes that I listen to. I read the Bible on tape for my family and the whole Bible. And I listen to it when I'm kind of in a hurry and don't have time for as much time as I'd like to, when I'm making the bed and getting my makeup on. Well, I'll put those cassette tapes on and listen to them. But it talks in Romans 13 about that there's not anyone in office that our God doesn't allow us to have in office. And it says in Romans 13:7, render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. This is talking about not only the ministers of the Lord that are attending continually upon this very thing, but it's also talking about the people that are in charge. You know, the people that are the mayors and the presidents, and we need to pray for the right person to become president. Well, I don't know if it's going to be H. Ross Perot or Bill Clinton or George Bush. We just want to make sure that the one that is in office is a person that believes in pro-life. In other words, that they are not wanting to make it where our tax money would pay for abortion, and our tax money would pay for some of the things that some of the people who are running for office want to. You got to learn those things. I know we shouldn't say gotta and must and should and all of those words, but we really need to think about that. Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. Let us walk honestly as in the day, not in reveling and drunkenness, not in immorality and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, make not provision for the flesh to fulfill its lust. There are things that we should do to live our life right so that we don't have to go to prison. But if we do have loved ones or family or friend, and if they are from this community, they are part of our family. They are our neighbor. And we should do everything we can for our neighbor in prison. But you know, if you remember, some of you are grandmothers like me, and you remember a movie that Shirley Booth had. She won an Academy Award called The Snake Pit, and it was about people who went to the insane asylum, they used to call them. And I think that's that you pitch people to when you put these people in prison. I know I've gotten some letters and information from some of you who've talked to me about, you think that for the rape victims, they should be castrated. Now, I don't know if that's a little bit stiff for them or not, but hey, it's got to be different than the way it is now. And we just can't sit behind our comfort chairs and our television and just think, oh, that's happening to somebody else, because it can be happening in our family. And we need to start speaking up for what we believe. And I want you to speak to me about, we have this program that I donate $200 a month of my own money, my husband's money, so that we can have a voice, a Vision Plus voice on while we have freedom to speak. And I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think that the Leona Helmsley of the world should have to go to prison and our tax money be used this way, or is there another answer for these people in prison? And I would like to hear from you. What is the answer for people in prison that have not been involved in sex crimes or violent crimes? Please let me hear from you. 461-8148, Bonnie Libhart. Write to me for number 40 River Bend, Guntersville, 35976. Call me 24 hours a day. You can get through to me. 205-582-0240. 205-582-0240. Or leave a message for us here at the TV station, 461-8148. Let's get off of the couch, not become a couch potato, and let other people know how we stand. I love you so much, and I think the time is short. The Lord's coming back soon. We need to love each other and think of loving ways that we can help each other. And maybe it's not going to prison. Yes, I know people are converted in prison, and we need to be going to prisons to convert them. Where it says, go into all the world, preach the gospel. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. He that believeth not shall be condemned. Trust in the Lord with all our heart, lean not upon our own understanding. In all our ways acknowledge Him, and He'll direct our path. How's He directing your path? The time is short. I know people who think the Lord's coming back in about 16 months. We may have 16 months, and we may have 16 days, we may have 16 minutes, and it may be in the next 16 seconds. We do not know when the Lord is coming back again, but we need to be ready, and we need to be spending our time wisely, our time, energy, and talent. You may have heard of a book that says, practice the presence of God. And I think that we need to practice the presence of God. Know what the Lord says in His Word about it. And if the Leona Hemsleys are to go to prison, by all means, they can go to prison. That's what they're to do. But Leviticus 6:5 says he must make the restitution in full, add a fifth to the value to it, and give it to all to the owner. And we thank you, and Lord bless you. And I ask to hear from you. I'm Bonnie Libhart. You're watching Vision Plus. Bless your heart for watching.